Welcome to Still Plays Galaxy of Heroes, a gaming channel that still plays Galaxy of Heroes. This is our talk series. CG didn't check with me while I was on vacation, so a number of things have happened over the past week. We got the State of the Galaxy and Fennec coming in with very little notice. Usually we've got a couple days to talk about the kit before the marquee characters are added in game. No luck this time. Here are our topics. We're going to cover Fennec first. Then we're going to talk about the Conquest because we got Conquest coming up in a couple of days. Territory war changes from the State of the Galaxy and how Relic 9 is being released there. Just my thoughts and opinions on that. The gearing changes, how I feel like that's going to affect the majority of players and primarily earlier game players, and then wrap up as we always do with the free-to-play gearing of my roster. We're not going to do a full breakdown of Fennec. That's more for theorizing how I think the kit is going to work. Now that she's already in-game, there's no point in doing that. But I do want to give some thoughts and speculation about her in general and how I think she's going to be working in the game, as well as just giving my initial impressions of the character. So I like that her kit is a little weird and different. That's fun to me. I like that she gets better with an undersized squads. You know how much I like doing undersized squads in Grand Arena. She seems tailor-made for 3v3. There will be very interesting usages there. She's also very clearly intended to be with Beskar Mando, and it's safe to say Old Man Boba Fett is going to be in the game in some capacity, and there are, I wouldn't say clues, but there are ways where you could see how she could be better with the right kind of character. One of those things is when we take a look here at Overconfident. One of the things that I've been fooling around and testing out on is with triggering her contract. I'll play some video of this a little bit later in the video, is I've been using L3 and IG11 because they have ways that naturally get rid of debuffs very easily. But they suffer from not being dark side scoundrels because they don't get that overconfident debuff on them to cleanse. So you really need to, at least with using Fennec as a leader, you need to be choosing your opponents wisely to make sure you're getting debuffs. So I would be using Fennec at least as a leader against debuff heavy teams. Against teams that are not setting the debuffs, she's going to be a little bit harder to get that contract off, or maybe impossible. Next item we are going to highlight on this channel is how easy Fennec is to gear up to Gear 11, and those who are regulars of this channel know that Gear 11 is that staging ground where I like to figure out how good characters are, where I like to test them, and from there, if I want to gear them up higher. And Fennec only needs 1 carb, 1 stun gun, and 2 Kairos in order to get to Gear 11. Some of the other pieces of note are 1 droid collar, 1 Nubian scanner, 3 holo projectors, 1 furnace, a Mark 8 Neurosav. Not really a big deal. I'm going to skip ahead here in this video a little bit to Gear 8 and just show what some of these pieces are getting her up to Gear 11. It's not a big deal. I geared her up as soon as I unlocked her after I looked at what her gearing requirements were, and seeing that they weren't a big deal and decided not to delay. Usually, I save these for these kinds of videos and tag them on to the end, but in this case we're going to highlight it right here, because these characters that you can get out of the way quickly, kind of like Moff Gideon was another character where I was surprised by how easy of a gear they are. I like to highlight that and pass on that information, so if you're delaying, you don't have to. I haven't done much testing yet, but what I've been interested in exploring is really L3 and IG11. Beskar Mando is obvious. Like, there's the Whistling Bird synergy where she's going to make sure he consistently, or more consistently, gets off the 20 stacks of Whistling Birds, which has been a problem with his earlier usage. There's been a number of times when I've gotten attacks off with less than 10 birds and I've got a slow Beskar Mando. Hopefully Fennec, especially a fast Fennec, reduces that level of variability. What I like about L3 is that she cleanses debuffs every time she's hit, and IG11, I think every time he attacks encounters, he gets rid of debuffs. It might just be with that special, I forget exactly, but he has his own ways of cleansing debuffs. I think best Old Man Boba Fett, whether he's a galactic legend or a legendary character, the synergies are going to be pretty predictable there. He could easily work with a team with Beskar, Mando, and Fennec. And I think what we'd see is he's most likely going to be Darkseid, and that way you can have a team where you have somebody who is going to have overconfident debuff for Fennec to cleanse before that payout happens. But it depends whether or not she becomes the leader. What I like is in 3v3, in the upcoming GAC season, we're going to be doing a lot of testing with her in 3v3 as the leader. She's still a little weak at 3 stars, but I really want to test out that Gear 11 low star viability with Fennec, because she's clearly designed for undersizes and 3v3 usages, and really trying to test out and exploit what the limits of her kit are in that capacity. I was traveling during the end of last Conquest, and it was miserable. The time requirements that it now requires in order to do well are absurd. My biggest issue with it is there isn't a way to pay your way out of it. Not that I would, I'm a free-to-play player, but if you're going to have grinds gate things, usually the reason to do that is to create an incentive for whales to spend their way out of it. There's no way to do that with how Conquest is currently set up. It's just whales and free-to-play players alike have to go through the misery of just grinding through Conquest. And I think that is extremely poor game design. We've talked about this before, but we're players, from my YouTube statistics, it's 25 to 40, 45 years old players who play this. We're too busy to be spending this amount of time in this kind of game mode. We're adults now. It's ridiculous to be asking people who have lives, families, to deal with this type of grind. For me, the final 3 days of Conquest, I'm actually very fortunate that I planned out Conquest the way that I did, because I was able to afford not playing as much during those 3 or 4 days where I couldn't play the game as much as I would have when I'm back home. If it wasn't for Darth Maul, I don't know if I would have put up with this grind and staying up extra hours in order to do well on this game mode. I really hope CG is paying attention to the player base's response to what they've done to Conquest. I don't mind that things have to be a grind, but when you have a grind to this degree, it is unacceptable. I was traveling last week when the State of the Galaxy came out, so I wasn't able to opine on it then. But I did put my thoughts down on Discord, so if you want to see my thoughts right away, Discord is the place for that. I make sure to always respond there. Videos are inconsistent depending on my work schedule. The territory wars, these changes were obviously needed. Divisions have been out of date for a couple years now. I wouldn't have minded if they would have planned out a little bit longer term. Like with Grand Arena, I went from Division 1 to Division 3. I'm already back in Division 2. Considering how quickly relics and ships add GP to rosters and going after Galactic Legends, and this emphasis now on relics, I'm not convinced that CG has planned on how quickly these new divisions may become obsolete. I feel like Grand Arena already needs another update, and CG has not been quick enough to respond to these types of changes in the past. That's a small gripe. I'm glad to see the change. My bigger concern is with Relic 9 being tied to territory wars. That is the strong possibility of being extremely destabilizing towards guilds, more so than Cam or Crankor. This is more akin to the introduction of territory wars, where if I was an early game player at the time of introduction of territory wars. And for those middling guilds that were trying to develop, territory wars was devastating. People just left guilds to go for guilds that could qualify for territory wars. And if you were on that threshold, it was dangerous. This is the same deal for these 260, 280 million GP guilds. It's very easy to lose some of your top performers as they look for 300 million GP guilds to qualify for. And that can create a cascading and snowballing effect. But more so than that problem, Relic 9 creates the incentive to cheat, which didn't exist before, because before the difference between winning and losing territory wars was extremely minimal. It didn't really matter one way or the other. Now it matters a lot by having Relic 9 tied. And we don't have the same tools to police cheating in territory wars as we do in Grand Arena or even raids, because in raids you can look at a member's rosters and see if they have anything that can score the amount of points that they score in raids. You can't see what teams people are using. You can see if maybe they take out a Galactic Legend and they don't have a Galactic Legend or a counter, but in most cases it's going to be a lot harder to track cheating in territory wars. And if you've been looking at Reddit, you see how CG has been responding to reports of cheating in Squad Arena and in Grand Arena, and it has been very discouraging how they've been. It almost seems like they aren't responding to it. It's more a mechanic to make players feel better than something they're actually reacting to. Whenever changes to the progression system come out, I'm always asked, does this change my approach to the game? As a free-to-play player, it does not. The position I've had as a free-to-play player is you need to choose between Grand Arena or Squad Arena. Relic 9 is going to be required for a top 10 performance or top 20 performance in the Squad Arena. You can, as a free-to-player, for a temporary period, finish in the top 10 of your Squad Arena, depending on your Squad Arena. But it is a lot harder to stay in the top, and it's a lot harder to respond to those changes, and it is not something that I'm interested in playing. But you play the game to the game modes that you like the most. For me, it's Grand Arena. And in Grand Arena, what Relic 9 and all these progression changes are, is an opportunity to rebalance your rosters. I've said this about Relics, I've said it about Relic 8. What you can do in these moments is all the characters that you geared too highly because you were newer to the game or didn't have a strategy, or characters that you had to gear highly in order to get a Galactic Legend or an Epic Confrontation character, or for a ship. Those gears, the effects of those relics and high gears are lessened by these new progression systems, because it allows the impact of that GP on like a Relic 3 Rolo to have a smaller impact on your top 80 GP that's used for matchmaking, unless that may have changed. I don't think CG's changed it, but it may have changed, whatever the top GP is now. When it comes to new relic levels, unless you care about Squad Arena, there is no reason to rush and go get them. I just got my first 2 Relic 8s to get the Executor. There was no reason to do it before then. There wasn't even much reason to have Relic 8 in order to perform highly in Squad Arena at the time. Let other players rush after Relic 9 and mess up their matchmaking. This is going to allow you to go up against opponents in Grand Arena who aren't as careful in managing their GP, and that's going to give you some advantages. Let everyone else experiment, figure out what the best Relic 9 characters are, and make decisions from there. In regards to the other gearing changes, this is a great change to the game. It actually makes it easier to play the way that I do, where considering the amount of incentives there are to have a broad roster, this makes having a broad roster a lot easier to do and a lot faster to do. When it comes to Galactic Challenges, Conquest, Grand Arena, there are a ton of incentives to have broad rosters these days, and being able to get all that other gear allows you to go after multiple squads faster. And if you play the way that I do, and I recommend, where you're going after gear 11, that allows you to achieve those characters faster. And for those who are newer to the channel, the reason I emphasize gear 11 all the time is because the requirements to go from gear 0 to gear 11 are far less than what it takes to go from gear 11 to gear 12. You can develop your roster far faster by doing it that way. And these changes, with the addition of gear to daily challenges, more core gear to the shard shop, territory war prizes, all of this is going to speed it up. I was hoping we'd see some stuff from assault battles, because assault battles are another part of one of those game modes that you're rewarded for having a broad roster. We get to see a lot of improvement in those places. So this will make developing things like my new account. It'll help that new account catch up for testing a lot faster. Because I think my long-term plan for that new account is to keep it, bring characters to gear 11, and leave them there just for testing purposes. Other than some of the epic confrontation characters where I may be required to get them higher for like gas. And we're going to wrap up the way we always do with the free-to-play gearing of my roster. It was fairly minimal since the last time we did a talk video. Omega here brought up to four stars? She's either 5 or almost 5 stars now. Threw on a Zeta, finished farm on Echo, and then Royal Guard, I believe, is the next one. We threw the Zeta on Royal Guard. We've been testing that out with a gear 11 Royal Guard. It's been fine. The Zeta creates some incentive to increase the gear on Royal Guard, but considering without Lord Vader, there's not that much incentive, just because the health pool from the leaders aren't as great. And we geared up Zam and Embo. We took the rest of those Lord Vader requirements, brought them up to gear 11. So I have everything for Lord Vader at gear 11. Could go in that direction, but I could also go in any number of directions. The only characters I don't have at gear 11 in terms of Galactic Legends are Vet Han and Vet Chewie, which will probably be in the next time I do a talk video, because there's not a ton of other characters that I'm working on in that aspect. Embo here is the last one in this video, I'm pretty sure. I'm just double checking what the pieces are. And then the week after that, this is about September 16th or so, took Echo up to 7 stars, finished Echo. Omega's now the only Bad Batch character that is less than 7 stars. And then we also worked on, we brought Beskar Mando here up to Relics. He's at Relic 1 now. Just now that I have the Executor, that's kind of mandatory. I don't recall if I took, oh yeah, I took him up to Relic 1. And then I think that's all I did. I may have looked, oh, Kira, because she's at gear 10, I just brought her to gear 11. There's a bunch of stun cuffs, which is why I took forever on doing it. But she's a solid lead and worth having around. That wraps up this video. I'm going to work on getting a methods video out about Conquest, how I'm tackling all those feats and approaching the game mode out around the start of the next Conquest, which is in 2.5 days about. And I'm going to do testing on Fennec, and if I find something interesting, I might put out another video there, and just in terms of the low star, low gear testing, and see if I discover anything that I find interesting, just as a counterweight to a lot of the testing that other channels do. It's a Relic Fennec usage, which I don't think is really helpful to me or a lot of the player base who don't have the resources to just immediately Relic somebody. And I think finding the viability, if a character is viable lower, then that just saves resources if you can be getting a ton of usage out of a character at an earlier level. But thanks for watching. Be safe out there, everyone, and be excellent to each other. This is Still Plays Galaxy of Heroes.